I remember the phone call. I'm in my basement, and he's like, I don't care if you quit, Benjamin. If you need to go be an engineer again, I'll still be your friend. I just don't want to see your family sad and miserable or you sad. I just want you to be happy. If you don't want to be a pastor, don't be a pastor.
Welcome, listeners. I am so pumped that you are joining us for another episode of Church Chat. This is the podcast where we have conversations about ministry that you wish you were having. These are real conversations with real people in the trenches talking about real things. And man, it is my prayer that these conversations bless you. I'm really, really excited about this one. Not as excited as my co-host, but I am excited. My name's Josh Ott.
I'm Emily, and I am that very excited co-host. We're very excited about this episode. Today's guest is a writer, coach, pastor, Benjamin Vrbicek. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I was just going to ask if I pronounced your last name right.
Yes, pretty darn close, I think. So It may have even been perfect. So Vrbicek. Yeah, sometimes I phonetically spell it on Zoom calls, but I just left it.
Well, I remember from you've written for our blog a couple of times, and so I've had to say your name out loud before, and sure. I definitely asked you to do it because I just would not have known. Is it Polish? What is it?
Yeah, Czechoslovakian back in the day. Okay. So a couple generations ago. Yep.
That's
you just get cooler every time I talk to you. And for our listeners, the reason why Emily is excited about, and I'm excited too, but Emily's super excited because these are two of the finest wordsmiths I have ever met. Benjamin and Emily are both very good at writing and the use of the English language. So I'm going to do my best to keep up.
Sound smarter.
Conversation.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, oftentimes,
maybe I need to change my voice a little bit.
No, you should put your glasses back on. That'll make you feel a little bit more studious. Yeah, no, I'm just super excited because you are clearly a bookish, writerly person. And other than Steve Anderson, I don't think we've really gotten many of those types on the podcast yet. So I'm excited to
Yeah, Steve
chat.
Also great with words.
Yep.
Great with words.
Yep.
We've known each other for a couple years now, I guess. And you might not know this, but you were one of the first people in EFCA that I ever had what I would call meaningful interaction with. We showed up to this little dinner. I think it was at West Shore.
Yes.
And I didn't know anybody. I don't even know why I ended up going.
It wasn't because of me. The president of the denomination came through.
Yeah. I think I was bullied a little bit.
You might have
into
sure
showing up.
Did.
And I was super uncomfortable at that point. I was pretty isolated, and that was a big first step. And I had a fantastic time. You and
great.
Your wife were there.
Yeah, it's rare. My wife and I get to go to something in the evening like that, but that was great. I do remember that pretty well. Josh was the life of the table. You
probably because I was uncomfortable.
You were overcompensated. It didn't feel like it.
That's so funny.
That's right. I didn't realize you were so new to it at that point too. I mean, maybe I was. It's going back 10 years almost.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the EFCA, but I hadn't connected, really with anybody, and more operating really too autonomous. And I remember thinking after that, man, all right, there's some good people. There's some really good people in this organization. Yeah. So thanks for that. Thanks for making me feel welcome.
You're welcome.
I love it. So we get to jump in with introductions by playing Two Truths and a Lie.
Okay, I prepared. I asked at the breakfast table.
Love it.
Oh boy.
All right. So do I give them to you, or you? That's
you take it. Take it away. Let's give it.
All right. Number one, while playing Foursquare, I almost killed a kid, but then saved his life.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Playing Foursquare. Yeah, almost killed a kid, but saved his life. And then when I was a kid, I lived in England for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And when I first moved to PA, I was almost killed by a bear while changing a flat tire. A lot of killing.
I know.
Yeah, so Foursquare, saving a life, lived in England, and attacked by a bear.
While changing a tire.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania.
There's a lot. We go deep into these. Usually Emily is cheating.
Usually I do cheat. Yep.
I don't see her doing that now. So she's been playing fair lately. Well, and I won the last one.
Yes, I know. I feel bad, actually. It is a little bit. It's turned in. Mostly because I'm so good at this, and Josh.
It's frustrating.
It's not really a competition. I mean,
No,
it's not an even
just
competition.
Yeah, although I did. I lost yesterday when we were recording. So that is sad. But partly I can't cheat because I don't have Instagram on my phone anymore. So that makes cheating a little bit. I know. It makes a little bit more.
I don't know how I feel about these, man. They're all like, so it's really key when you're coming up with these to have them all sound and feel the same. And these all sound and feel the same. So you can usually pick up especially if people try too hard, like something's different in a sentence.
I don't know what that says if I'm a good liar or something. I'm not sure what this means. What are you implying, Josh?
On this podcast. Yeah. There have been a lot of really good liars on this podcast.
Yeah.
Man, so they're all like a little bit. What was the second one again? 3 years.
He lived in England. Yep, for 3 years.
3 years as a kiddo.
Huh. Which I could see, because you are a writerly, bookish type, which just seems like it would fit in England.
English are more refined than us.
Well,
I don't even know. I think I know what I have to go with, but I'm really not confident.
Okay, my question is, how do you almost kill a kid in Foursquare? I mean, if you hit the ball at him in the chest, in the head, but it's like usually a bigger bouncy ball. But if he's like a vicious baller, then I don't know.
Yeah. He's not leaking.
I know.
There's something there. There's something it's worth discussing.
And what I have a different question. Like, how do you define a bear attack? Is it like he came up and smelled you, or he swatted at you?
Which that would be terrifying, though.
Did somebody throw a teddy bear out the window? People try to play those games.
I would like an opportunity to explain each of these very briefly, if there is a chance.
Yes.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'm not confident, but I'm gonna go with the bear.
Okay, and I also am not super confident, but I'm gonna go with Foursquare.
Okay. All right. So Josh wins again. I'm sorry.
Dang it! No.
Sorry, Emily. I wanted this for you.
On a slippery slope towards not doing well. Shoot.
If our listeners could just see my
jubilance. I think yesterday you played it pretty cool. I think you were trying to be really nice to me. But you really are going all out today.
I need to hear these stories.
All right,
I need them.
Very briefly. It's a family kind of story that gets told often of the day I almost killed a kid, which then I add, but I saved his life.
Yes.
Simultaneously, almost.
This got such Michael Scott vibes right now. I hit Meredith with the car. Yeah. Don't worry. I saved her.
So anyway, little Christian school down the road, you can go be Wednesday reader. It's fun. The pro tip is you stay for recess, which I almost ruined it for every parent, apparently. Like I stay for recess. I'm, with these 3rd and 4th graders, we're playing 4th grade. I get into it just for fun. And the line to get in the game gets kind of close to the back of my square. We tangle up with this little boy who's wearing glasses. And we start what I'll call a death roll. And then his head is going towards the curb. And I cradle his head. And they can't see. You can see my hand here.
Yeah.
Like millimeters from the curb, and his glasses going right into his face. So I almost roll on top. I did roll on top of him, but I captured his head. And the only injury was I tore my jeans and got my knee really bloody. And the athletic director and the recess monitor was just horrified. Like, what are you doing? You can't do this.
Man.
So that was that story. When I was a kid, I did live in England. My dad moved us around few times. He worked in factories, not military stuff, but worked in factories, lived in England. I don't know that the bookishness didn't take there. That's a later story. We'll get to that.
Yes, I'm sure we will.
The PA bear attack is only partly true. That's the part. I was not fully attacked, but it was my welcome to PA moment. So I'm a cyclist. I like riding, and I'm going over what they call Blue Mountain. It's kind of the ridge between us and Josh. If you go down the highway, sort of. So anyway, I'm over this big hill. A car goes over the top, and I hadn't been in PA but a month, and I don't really know the scenery. But the two families, or a husband and wife, she leans over and looks at me, going real slow. I'm like, why are they slow rolling on me here? I don't know what's going on. And they're like, did you see that bear? It's huge. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm in a helmet and I'm changing a flat tire, and they go, well, take care. And they just drove away. That's the story. And so I just was terrified, changed as fast as I could the tire and got out of there. But so I was not attacked, but that was my welcome to PA that I always think about.
These are fantastic.
Yeah, those were stellar ones. Well done.
Fantastic stories. I can't believe that it was at a volunteering at a Christian school book reading thing that you sung around extra for the recess and clobbered some.
Oh yeah, it's become my standard move now. I do it a few times a year. But I never play as hard as I did that day. That's
what happened at school today, honey. The pastor rolled me onto the concrete. Massive injury of Foursquare by our guest speaker.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know if it's worse that it really wasn't with the ball. It was with your own body that you took somebody out.
Full out. Man. Tackle, block to the back.
Yep. I love it. Well, we have a lot to jump into. I'm super excited again because of what we're going to chat about. But first, I got to know, you have a degree in mechanical engineering and you're a very gifted writer. How did you end up, and you went to school in Missouri. So again, how did you end up pastoring a church in the capital of Pennsylvania, of all places?
I know. So I will. There's layers to that. Obviously, there's twists and turns and stuff. So I'll give a brief overview. Maybe we could jump back in. But I hated reading and writing. So that. Oh my gosh. So Josh and I don't know if you would even say it that strong, but that's how I felt for my whole life until really became a Christian, or at least started following Christ in college. And so grew up in a Christian home, but I think it took from the sense of the externals. I don't know that my heart was in it. And so anyway, I chose engineering because my father did it. I was good at math and science, and then I hated reading and writing. And I felt like that was a way to avoid. So it was as much to play to my strengths as it was to avoid my weaknesses. Yeah. Then became a Christian, got to seminary, and I felt being tugged into that. I was doing fire protection in St. Louis, Missouri. That was my job after college, and did that 6 years while I full-time, part-time seminary stuff. But I just was there with all these, well, I'll call them liberal art guys and gals. They're like, you guys can read. I'm like, how do you read word? Like, I'm being dumb, but like, it wasn't so much reading words, although that was part of it. It was more like, how do you write? Like, I don't understand this output. Like I've written 2-page papers. They had equations in them. That's all I've ever done. How are you doing this? Yeah. So I was kind of sink or swim, and I was sinking. But through that process, I left. And you job search process, you fill out the pastoral stuff's big applications. And I remember writing one sentence in one job application, job I didn't get. But anyway, I'm writing in like hobbies. And I'm like, I think I like to read and write. And I wrote that and I was like, wow, what happened to me? Where did this weird version of me come from? I was like self-aware, but I wrote it and I thought, but I think that was, now it's 14, 15 years ago. And I think that's what changed everything. So very quickly, how I got to Pennsylvania, I couldn't find a job. It was kind of recession time. 2008, 9, 10, and then into 11, but found one job in Tucson, Arizona, had no connection to the church or the geography there, but they hired me and I was real thankful for it. And then 3 years later, I was pastoring with a guy named Jason. We were co-pastors for a number of years. Great guy. He has since left our church, but he hired me and said, do you want to come be a part of a team? And I was like, I think I would. Teamwork. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed collaborating with a team. So anyway, that's how I got to Pennsylvania about 11 years ago. And I've been the pastor of Community Church since. So
that's really cool. Yeah. I remember Jason, great guy. Yeah. You still have contact with him?
Yeah, regularly. He's a big GIF sender, or GIF. I don't know how you want to pronounce it. So
I love it. Yeah. Did you start at Community as a co-pastor? What were your responsibilities? Were you more of a teaching pastor?
Yeah. This is good. Maybe this is, we've desired to have real conversations. I think it was good. It was hard though. Like we went for a co-pastor model, which was great. I think that had some real strengths to it. So we shared what I would normally joke is like the pain and the glory of pastoral ministry. So we did, 50-cent preaching, weddings, funerals, all of that. And then we sort of played to strengths. So I did some connection stuff. He did more missions, so on and so forth. But we neither of us loved the title co-lead pastor, so we just called ourselves teaching pastors. And I love that. That was like my favorite era of a title. He left in the summer of 19, and we sent him off with joy and all of that. It wasn't a terrible departure or anything. But out of that, I was like, well, I guess I'm the lead pastor now, and I can't just call myself the teaching pastor. So I don't love the title as much, and I maybe don't even excel quite as well at it. But that's what I am now.
How was the transition to because you're stepping from a very healthy, from my understanding and interactions with you guys and other conversations, very healthy partnership in vision and all things pastoral. And then Jason heads back to the Midwest. You take on lead pastor role in 2019, right around the corner, is some of the most challenging stuff that we've had to lead through, probably. What was that whole scene like?
Oh, it was awful. I mean, it was good in some ways. So just more context. The fall of 19 was going to be the worst fall I've ever had as far as ministry schedule. And that was before Jason left. So
nice.
I know. So we had something like 5 weddings, 8 or 9 weeks, which is rare. I mean, I'm at a number of weddings, but there was a lot. And then I went through the ordination process, October of 19, which better and worse, mine was a little more contested. We could talk about that. I had a massive massive shoulder surgery. I had an injury a long time ago, and then church softball made it worse. So I was in a sling during preaching through the fall during some of that right after the ordination. And then just on the more concrete church side, while Jason and I got along well and it was healthy, he was here first by about a year and a half or 2. Had a stronger, bigger, louder personality, and that was a gift. It's a joy. I like being around him, but I can tend to be more quiet, especially if I don't have to be. And so anyway, that dynamic of being first and being more vocal, I think, it was hard, even though we really were co-pastors on paper and in many ways kind of received that way in the congregation. When he left, I think I'm 6 months in to that transition, and I'm like, I think I've only been a lead pastor here 6 months. I was totally associate pastor. Now, he didn't do anything wrong. I don't think I did anything wrong. I don't think our elders did anything wrong. I just think in perception of both in my ability to lead was really, I was just like, man, I struggled to lead. I didn't know what to do. So anyway, it was a hard 6 months. Well, one more anecdote that you may appreciate, you can ask about. But I said we played to our strengths, and we did. But then when it came to managing staff, some things we shared. We said, we share managing staff. And I looked around, and my joke has usually been we shared that sort of the way we share a community microwave. We're like, everybody at the office cleans it. Nobody's cleaning that, right? It just gets dirty. And our staff wasn't dirty. They didn't do anything wrong. I just don't think I had much experience there. So I just had a lot to learn in a short period of time. And COVID was coming 7 months later. So it was hard.
Yeah.
What did you do, and what did it take to get you back into that role? And I'm sure there was adjustments for you leading your staff and then you leading the church. What did that look like?
Yeah. I mean, by God's grace, I think I have skills at it. He's gifted me to do it. They were underused, underutilized. I mean, underutilized sounds like it's here I am, put me in coat. I'm ready to play.
Yeah.
It's they weren't good. So. And there was casualties not casualties, but there was consequence of that 2 years later when some of the staff management I really am not being a good leader. I'm fine, when I'm in the pulpit and doing things, but just health of staff and staying close to them. So we had to put I probably swung it the other way for a while of not over managing, because I really don't micromanage much, but just staying close and frequent one-on-one meetings with staff. But I think that summer there was a pastor elder meeting where I asked all the staff who are elders also to leave. And I just stayed with the lay elders. And I was like, guys, I don't think it's broken, but it's getting really close. My own kind of desire, joy, passion to be a pastor. And so, it was kind of I'm either doing it wrong or I'm not made for this. So that was kind of an existential, I don't know, it sounds so heavy and dark, but it was.
I've had that moment.
Yeah. How did you what did you do?
Oh man, I probably didn't do it as well as you. That was a nice move with your lay elder board. It was Christmas Eve, and I was like, I am a terrible pastor, and I need to do something else. And I was gonna skip Christmas Eve service. My wife came in and she's like, "Aren't you getting ready?" All the kids were ready to go, and I'm like, "I'm not going." She's like, "What do you mean you're not going?" My dad was my associate at the time, and she's like, I just don't, I can't do it. And it was the first time I kind of let out all the struggles that I was feeling for the last year.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You're going, get your butt up and get dressed." So I forgot my Bible with all my notes in it, winged a sermon. It was a great service, didn't care. Called my elder chairman the next day, or not the next day, was Christmas. Called him the day after Christmas and said, I'm not, I need Sunday off. I'm not in a good spot. I don't want to get into it right now. I just need you to trust me. I just need this Sunday off. They talked to the elders, gave me the Sunday off. I went to another church that I thought was successful and said, I'm going to see what this person has that I don't have and validate me exiting ministry?
Oh, that seems like the wrong question.
Yeah, and it was. And I went there, and it was like God was just reaffirming my call the whole time. Like, he just couldn't get him out of my head. So it was a really powerful moment. But I wonder why that. So what, if you've had a moment like that, maybe, and they're a little different, but like I've had a moment where I've just really questioned, like, am I good at this? There's got to be a lot of people listening that have that question or that feeling, or have been there. What would you say to like me on Christmas Eve, or somebody listening that maybe is like in this place where they're looking at it and they're feeling whatever, maybe ill-equipped or, questioning their calling, or maybe they just think, I don't think it's always questioning calling. I think it's just something that you go like, wait, am I good at this or not? What would you say?
Ooh, what I want to say, and maybe I'll just say it, is you might not be good at it. I was there, and full, like as good as you can be, or will be someday, 2 years from now, or whatever. Right. But that was part of for me was owning like I have the title lead pastor. I got to learn how to do it. I think there's kind of a mantra of like, oh no, just look inside. You got it. You can do this. You're better than you think. And that's not always wrong either. But sometimes it's like, no, I actually have to ask for help. And I had to have a lay elder mentor me on schedule and how to lead staff and how to do things. And like, that's humbling. That's not what I wanted. But I think just if you can look that in the eye to some degree and bring it close and sift through where it's true and not true. Because there are other places, surely if someone's been in ministry any length of time, they had some sense of calling, they had some gifting, like the Lord has used them in some ways. They've led people to Christ, they've helped people and they've taught or whatever it is. So like to say, well, maybe you're not good at it. I don't mean it like everything.
Right. I totally get you.
But maybe some part of the job that's new or hard or whatever. And I think, I mean, the commonality in our story, I didn't know that, Josh, but like would be that the lay elders heard you, it seems, and worked with you through that. And you're here now. And as hard as that was, and I'm sure that was the start of a longer thing. And so I just think the second thing I would just say is bring trusted other people involved in that. Hopefully those trusted people will be in your local church and you have at least that minimum level of health around you that you could get help there. That would be two things, I guess.
I came out of there going, I need help.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm supposed to be doing this, but I need help. And then that's where I was like, I need an executive pastor. Like this stuff I'm not good at, nor am I gifted at. And so that's when I was like, I came out of that with a whole different, it was a long process, probably 6 months of working through all of that stuff. But
can I add one thing? I'm sorry, but I would just say that the gospel we love and believe allows us, I think, encourages us to not be deflated, crushed, dejected when we own that we might not be, even I imagine most people listening are like, no, you are called to ministry. It's been affirmed over a long period of time. But even if that's not true, or even if it's not true for the next 5 years, there's a season where it's not true. God still loves you. Jesus didn't love you because you're a pastor, a ministry leader, director, or whatever, blog podcaster, or whatever. Like that's not how we're made right in his eyes. And so I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. I spent so much time in Ephesians 1 that year where you like get the start of that. You're chosen, you're adopted, all that stuff, and just trying to reorient my whole identity back towards my relationship with God instead of what I do for God.
One thing we did, we kind of equated pastoral ministry to a suitcase, and like I had just put so much into it that we sort of took everything out and then just put the things back in, at least tried, that made sense for me and for us and whatever a pastor should be. I don't know, did you get rid of some roles? Did you add, how did that work?
Oh man, it was great. First of all, like the elders were so good at working with me and helping me figure it out. Just so loving and gracious. They gave me more time off, made sure I was resting, because I'd gone a pretty long run without really taking rest. So they did a whole lot of soul care for me and also helped me put together the pieces to carry part of the weight of ministry that I couldn't. So like stuff came out of the suitcase box. Like I love that idea, and that was a huge help. And for those of you that are listening, you're like, well, I can't have a team. We don't have enough money. We didn't either at that period of time. And we just got really creative. So we got really clear on defining key important lay roles, empowering volunteers who loved it because now they're getting a lot of attention in specific roles, and it's emphasizing their value. We part-timed almost all of our staff. Like, we didn't have staff, and we're like, we can't afford to hire full-time. Let's hire part-time. We have people around. God's given us people. We just got creative, but yeah, it was, I wouldn't be here if the elders hadn't helped me walk through that the way it was, the way we did it.
I think it's really interesting listening to you both and your experiences. Did you both just luck into healthy elder boards? What a gift to have elders who are not threatened by their lead pastor being like, I'm done. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And that's like, must have been a really safe relationship to allow you space to figure it out. I'm sure some would be like, oh, absolutely not. If you can't hang, we can't hang. Peace out. Maybe I just don't have a great view of elder boards, apparently. But like, that just seems so cool that you both had that experience.
Yeah, it's the lay elders that kept us, sounds like, both in church. I mean, pastoring and leading. I'm thankful for it. Gift is the right word. I could say, hey, well, I did this or that, or cultivated health or whatever. Like, it was the Lord's kindness that it was that they were there. So I even think, so I'm going to go have lunch with him today every other week or years. Mike Grenier, I'll say his name because he was a lay elder at the time. I just remember, so some of my own advice, Josh, like, oh, what would you say to someone? Well, like Mike, I remember the phone call. I'm in my basement and he's like, I don't care if you quit, Benjamin. If you need to go be an engineer again, I'll still be your friend. I just don't want to see your family sad and miserable or you sad. I just want you to be happy. If you don't want to be a pastor, don't be a pastor. It's like, wow. And then I remember another time we're eating soup in the basement here at the church, and I'm sitting there, and this is sort of a year later after that. I got to be a better man. We worked through that, but like I still wasn't quite a good manager, and there's some staff challenges. And I remember yelling. He's like, well, I don't know what you want to do. I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to go anywhere. Who are you? Like, what?
I know. That seems like such a unicorn.
Yeah, just yell back and then leave, and then I can leave, and I'll have a reason to be even more mad. And he didn't, and it all got better. It all got better because he stayed.
It is a gift. It really is. And I think, though, there is a factor that helps you realize the gift, and there are unhealthy elder boards out there. There are elder boards that have elders that are not qualified or called to be elders out there in the world. Benjamin, you know this, Emily, you all know this. We've all known or had experiences or talked to people. They dread going to elder meetings because they see an elder's car in the parking lot and they just want to keep driving by. I mean, that's the reality of a broad picture of ministry. And some of you listening, you might be in that space. I do think, though, that while I did nothing to get it sounds like you're kind of saying the same thing. Like, I didn't do anything to create an elder board, to get an elder board. Most of those elders, I didn't even have an influence in picking or being a part of the, calling them. But I did have a relationship, like I was relationally invested, I think, and they were relationally invested. It wasn't just about business or church. Mm-hmm. And so when I had a very transparent, humble moment where I'm like, I'm hurting, I think instead of going into business mode, not even our pastor, it was more like, our friend, he's one of us and he's hurting. And that's something that even if you have an unhealthy elder board, you can start to build relationships. I think, right? You tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but like you can start to just have some lunch, eat some soup, spend some time in the church basement, whatever, with somebody on your team and start to build a relationship where you understand each other outside of your title and role, and you just understand each other as people. Well, that was not where I was planning on this conversation going at all.
I know. I'm just sitting here like looking at the questions being like, okay, how are we going to fit this in?
So let's transition a little bit. That got really deep. So let's go let's go talk about Benjamin. You were the first person in the Evangelical Free Church of America to be ordained with an amillennial view. And I'm correct on that, right?
Yeah,
or
suspect
were you not
ever since.
First one through the wall. And let me just, I actually sat in that. And
you did.
I was super impressed and learned. I feel like I always learn from you. I'm one of those people. I watch and I listen and I just try to learn. But I was so impressed and learned so much from you, watching you handle very difficult questions. And I think even one of our mutual friends who was a part of the whatever you call the board that
council.
The council even admitted that you probably took more shots than anybody. And at one point there was even like, hey, that question is not fair. You're just trying to get at him. But the way you handled that was so impressive. What was that process like? How do you there has to be, I'm leaving there going, that's how I need to respond. Even not to theological stuff, but like anytime somebody's like coming at me. Mm-hmm. What was that process like for you? What'd you learn through it?
Yeah. I learned, one very minute thing. I didn't have great clarity about speaking about the omnipresence of Christ. And, there's a very specific Trinitarian stuff as it relates to God's physical presence. That was a weird part of the ordination. It was like, there's a quirk here I've not thought through as well as I could. So what I would say is that ordination like presses you into like areas of things like, oh, wow, I think, I'm Orthodox, but I could say that better than I certainly was. But what did I learn? I think the EFCA is a great place. That's one takeaway. It was more contested. I joke it was kind of like the pre-conference gladiator match. Like we went into this other room and like invited 80 people. Like what other ordination? What are we doing? No one else is doing this.
That's interesting.
No seats for anybody.
No. Like these are, we keep mentioning basements. These are like obscure things in some room somewhere and 7 people. But so anyway, yeah, I learned a lot. I love the EFCA and I had been going to I'm kind of in some ways it probably is unhelpful. It is like the Instagram version of something where like you only see the highlight reel. Like that's a strength of like that was playing to my strengths. Many other things are weakness, but that highlighted some of that of just the thinking, the answering questions. And because I'm on those councils and I've been sitting in them since, I had sat in for a year for the last 7 years at that point, just as a kind of a nerd. Like I like them. I want to be helpful. And, I want to help credential other people someday. So I was familiar with it, but not the way it went down. Yeah, that was bigger, and the questions were deeper, harder, et cetera.
So, what made you decide? I mean, was it a requirement of your church that you be ordained?
I don't think they necessarily required it. I think we believe in it as a good thing, and it's part of our way to kind of, if you ask me candidly, like, would you like the free church to be a little less free? I probably would say yes. I think that, I think some denominational, even that word, but like heightened sense of belonging to something, I think would be great for most of the churches. Now, that's not true of all. Some are very invested, but I think some are a little more autonomous than we need to be. And so credentialing is a part of submitting to and participating in, I think, the greatness of the free church.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wondered, like, because you had to have known going in that that at least view, the amillennial view, is not necessarily what the EFCA subscribes to in a corporate conviction type of way. So why bother, doing the whole thing if there's a chance that they weren't gonna.
It's part of the quirk. Mine being the first was that no one really should have been ordained that quickly. At the time, you needed 3 years from the licensing to the ordination, and I think in good faith, no one really questioned that when I said it, and I still believe it's true, that it changed my view. For me, it was 4.5 years, but I had gone through the licensing process, had the ministry license, and was waiting for ordination, and then I really just spent more time studying this one issue for a couple of years. I was like, I really do feel convicted about this. So, and then the Free Church changed the summer of 19, and so I was the first ordination to come through. So, because really you should have been licensed first as an amillennial and then changed. So the only people who would have been ordained that quickly were those who changed midstream or So yeah, I went through it because I was committed to the process, and then the free church changed, and I thought, well, this will be a great time to go through
super fun.
Yeah.
Was there any fallout after that whole deal? Did you get any?
I think, every free church thing I go to at the Eastern District, somebody still teases me about being the amillennial guy. It's 5 years in now. It's been a little bit less of that. But, there were a few, I think dispensationalism is a more strongly held belief in the Eastern District than where I was ever been. And so I think to say it positive, I intrigued people. To say I was suspect to a few is certainly true. But I think over the long haul, that ordination went so well, and then participation in the free church more broadly, I want to say won over, but they've kind of like, well, he's not crazy. He seems to take the Bible seriously in a whole bunch of ways, and he's not liberal and et cetera. And so there was a number of fallout. There was a number of hour-long conversations in the next couple of years with a handful of pastors like, well, okay, what do you believe about this? And Israel and the church and like all these things and to talk through trying to give Bible answers to those. I think it's been helpful for our district and those other people.
Yeah,
I didn't convince anybody, but
yeah, but so what? The conversations, the dialogue and the building of some mutual respect is a very healthy thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So you're also coming out with a book about end times.
I know. So that is the story of this, the genesis of this book. Yeah. That the free church made me, I'll say made. Sounds like I'm a victim. Stare at the end times for a year and a half. What that did in my heart was care a whole lot less about amillennialism, to be honest, and that the biggest truths of the return of Christ became the brightest. Like the things we all share, which is kind of the free church ethos anyway, but the things we all share, that he's coming back and it's going to be great, really did something in my heart. So that winter, I wrote a book proposal that didn't get accepted. Well, it did get accepted provisionally, and then eventually it fizzled out with that publisher. But I got so excited about it, I thought, well, this will be meaningful. It's not a normal book on the end times, I would say, what people might expect when they hear that. But 5 years later, I convinced somebody. So I'm in the process of writing it now. Will be with Baker Books. Won't be out probably till summer of 26. It's weird how slow these things go, especially when you start thinking about them in the summer of 19. But it's trying to say that the return of Christ is good news, especially for those who are suffering. And so it weds together, if you can use the word genre of suffering, with particular hopes embedded in the return of Christ. So feasting for the famished, justice for the wronged, family for the forsaken, like these very specific types of suffering, health challenges, glorification for strugglers. I just think there's some people who have, whether through their own sin or sinned against, they'll be a struggler in some area of their life. And that might not be fixed until Christ returns fully. So trying to wed like the big hopes of the return of Christ with genres of suffering. So it made it a harder book to market to a publisher to sell them that this would be good. But I'm trying to say, I think this is what the Bible authors are doing over and over again. I think this is the New Testament authors are not abstractly talking about the return of Christ. They're writing to real people who are going through hard things, and they're saying this is a good thing. The end times have been relegated often to kind of a place that we just ignore, either because they've been overemphasized or wrongly emphasized, or I think our prosperity, like we just don't have to think about it. Our hymnody doesn't, our song choices doesn't, we don't have the same kind of fourth verse classic look to the return of Christ. When he shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may them and him be found. Like that, we just don't, we might sing that song, but like in general, the modern songs aren't focusing on it in the same way. So I hope it works. It's been hard. It seemed like it was going to be funner to write in 2019 than it is right now. I'm not loving it, but I'm trying.
Oh man. Well, I am personally so pumped to read this book. Yeah, I'm just super stoked about it. But you've published multiple books, with either self-published or through kind of more smaller publishing houses. What made you pursue a more traditional book contract?
I love that question because I think some people do answer it like, well, this was a choice for me. I had Zondervan Collin, and then I thought about self-publishing, and I thought, I'll just self-publish. Like, that's not how it works for most people. They're begging traditional publishers to pay attention to them. And, you might get their attention, and they might read your proposal. So I don't know that everybody, you might, Emily, and maybe Josh too, but like there's this long process. You don't just write a book and like someone says, yeah, I'll publish that. There are that does happen for people who have very much arrived, but yeah, you write these things called proposals, which are like a business plan for a book. So who you are as an author, sample chapters. It's like the comparisons of a realtor thing where you like the comps of a house. You're like, hey, it's like this but different, like this but different, and so you got to write all that stuff up. And so yeah, I had a lot of rejections of this one, but I had always wanted to write for traditional publishers. I like that teamwork. I like the thought of working with experts, but just I had written some books that were so niche, and I had no platform. I wasn't really, and I needed to practice, frankly. So I just have spent 10 years doing that, and I thought this one could be good enough and helpful enough that maybe I would keep trying and persevere, and so have been for the last few years. So I wrote my church goals into 23 for now what is 24. I said, I'm just going to keep trying this book. Like we have real church goals and then like a couple bonus ones. And like the bonus one of them was, I'm going to try. And so I tried through the winter and spring and made some progress.
Yeah. So that must have taken, rejection is not easy, especially when it's something you're passionate about. What did you give yourself like a deadline, or I'm going to try until then and then come up with a plan B, or what made you keep going? That I think I would have been completely demoralized with 7 rejections.
Yeah. People say that's normal. It doesn't feel normal when you're getting them. So,
yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Each time I just kind of said, well, I'll try and make it better, and then I'll quit and put it away and be mad for a while. And then I reread it 6 months later. I'm like, no, this is still good. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say like, no, it's still good. Someone should read this. And for the longest time, I felt this was kind of my favorite stuff I'd written of anything. So for this one, it lingered on. Other things, part of that rejection process is, there's really not a market for it, write something else. But this one just kind of lingered in a passion and desire. And so I just kept trying.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's
it felt
amazing.
dumb at times. It feels like there's a virtue here. Oh, I kept trying. It's like, it just felt kind of dumb for a while. But to keep trying when there wasn't people saying yes. But it's been nice to have some encouragement now, some kind of tailwind.
Yeah. And like you've written for very well-known platforms like Desiring God and Gospel Coalition, in addition to EFCA East,
EFCA East.
A large platform here. Do you have any advice for pastors or church leaders who want to pursue something like that? I think it's probably always like you always need to be checking yourself of like, man, why am I wanting to do this? But when you have a gift like that, it's best to use it. So
yeah, it can go wrong, but I think, it's just like preaching. You still, someone should be up there preaching, it's a good thing when done with the right motives, and they're never pure enough, et cetera, but you sure try. A lot of advice, look me up, call me. I'll talk to someone for an hour if they're in the free church and want to talk about that. But just in ministry, I would say, I kind of refer to, it sounds too violent, but guerrilla warfare of like, you start small and you try and work your way up. And again, that can sound sleazy, but there is a goodness to contentment. Like, I'm just not going to email Christianity Today on my first article. Let's just not do that. Let's find someone where it can be a yes. Let's do the book reviews, which I call kind of the grunt work. It's a lot of work to do them well, and very few people read the book reviews. But submitting to that process for 10 years will change you, and in good ways, and make you maybe somebody that would be helpful with words, or more helpful. So I think just starting small and being content with that. And then when people do ask you to do something, I try to say yes. I've always some places I write for less than I used to or whatever, but if someone asks, I kind of always had my yes on the table, like privately, like if as time allowed. I thought that was a way to be faithful to the Lord, say, oh, maybe the Lord, this or that, and just try.
Do you feel like you spend more time writing, or do you spend more time reading?
Oh, I'm definitely writing more now, but I'm not happy about it. So okay. It's sort of I just quit something, so maybe I can just bring this up real quick. So I've been the managing editor for a small Christian website called Gospel Centered Discipleship. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the staff knows and the team knows and some other people, and now you're knowing. But that's okay. I'm quitting well. It's fine. I won't be the managing editor. But it was so much work in the mornings, and I loved it. It put me right there with words and authors and encouraging writers. Like, because our thing wasn't just publish good articles; it was mentor writers, and that's the part I really loved. Is that it's kind of a lonely, hard world out there publishing articles for a lot of places because they just don't. It's a content mill, and they're thankful for you if you'll help them with your name or good words or both. And otherwise, they're not really interested in growing you. And so I love that Gospel-Centered Discipleship majored on mentoring writers, but I just got so busy that I was kind of dying. And so I just announced, like, working with my boss to find a transition there. So part of that is my reading totals coupled with that. My kids are all bigger. And 4 years ago, back in 19, the one thing that made that season so easy is I had no high schoolers, but now I've got 4 kids in youth group because we have junior high there as well. Several of them in varsity sports. They only do one thing. It's not like we're trying to make our life a circus, but like they only do one thing. But when you have 6 kids all doing one thing, it's bonkers. And so I've had to quit. And unfortunately, sorry, that was a long answer. Reading is I'm doing less than I want, but partly because I have a contract now. There's anxiety. Like I had never anticipated before. All the other deadlines, many of them were self-inflicted. Yeah. But this one feels real, and I'm like kind of scared about it. So I'm only.
So that kind of goes into this question. You have half a dozen children. It's fun to refer to 6 really kids fun. As half a dozen. Active. You're active. Coaching, attending sporting events. You coach cross country. You have the lead pastor role. You're writing. You got a book contract. I don't know how many people listening have a half dozen children or are writing for a publisher, but we all have a lot to balance. Mm-hmm. How have you balanced in a healthy way?
That doesn't
not good when I ask a question and I get
Well, when you list it out like that, Josh, it feels like I have a problem.
No.
Or 7 problems, 8 problems. Yeah, I mean, I'm in that stage where I need to prune things because I just kept adding things and things weren't going away. And so I'm trying to do that thoughtfully and wise just to not fall apart. But one thing that does help is some of the hobby, passion, joy, put wind in my sails sort of things are also some of these things. And so it's not like I hate coaching, I hate being athletic, I hate lifting weights, I hate writing books, I hate articles, I hate whatever. And I just have to do it because it pays or something, because it doesn't pay them. I just love them. So they're kind of fun. It was reaching a place of tonnage where I wasn't really enjoying it as much. So that I think just lightening that. And then I think just choosing that, knowing what home base is really important. So family, of course, but then church ministry and trying to not let, I think our staff is healthy. I think we're preaching good sermons. I think we're growing. I think we planted a fine church the other year. And if all those things are falling apart, all the other things go away pretty quickly, or they will go away in bad ways, So I think maybe the advice to someone else is just knowing what the really important one is and the one that really pays the bills and the one you're really called to and doing that one well.
Okay. I have a bunch of other questions, but I will, for the sake of time.
I can go rapid fire if you want to do a couple of them, but I realize I probably talked too long.
Let's do our first ever church chat rapid fire.
Oh my.
Emily.
Okay. These are kind of I can't anticipate being rapid fire, but I have faith in you, Benjamin, that you can do this. Okay. So let's start with a more easy one. What would you say your biggest literary influences are?
I was looking at my bookshelf because you'd sent these questions. I think Anthony Doerr is one of my favorites.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Me and Emily are just going to talk here for a minute.
Yeah.
Gosh, you can hang out, but Emily Doerr.
Yeah, I'm just going to thumbs up.
Yeah. So not a Christian, but feels close to Christianity and has some influences from his youth. I would say Jared Wilson, kind of from a pastoral writing kind of world. There's 2. I could do more. Zach Eswine for me, although he hasn't written as much. His book, The Imperfect Pastor, is still kind of one super life-giving. So I'm going to say a name that's controversial now, but I'm kind of naming him from 5 years ago. Russell Moore, his book, his book's on adoption, and then I would say The Storm-Tossed Family is like him at his best, and then Tony Reinke would be a few that I really appreciate. And I could do women authors that I appreciate too, but those are kind of pastoral world.
Sure. Because Russell Moore he's the editor for Christianity Today, right?
He is, yeah. He has a title there. Yep.
How does reading influence your preaching?
I think in good ways. I mean, but how specifically? People say they're so different. I think for me, I do find them being far more similar than when I hear people make them out to be. Some of that is I am intentionally preaching with more, I'm doing it here with my voice, I'm not meaning to, but intonations and gestures and whatever, the convolutedness of a sentence can get spoken very clearly if you do what I'm doing now, which is choosing to enunciate, and so I think some of my preaching might drift a little more towards that way, so which allows me to have the writing and the preaching be a little more similar. But I think the best sermons are usually coming from me when I am doing more reading, like not related to pastoral, like, I mean, maybe they're pastoral ministry books, but it's not like, okay, we're in 1 Corinthians now, so this is a commentary and I'm reading it. But when I'm just making that time to do other ministry and the wheels are turning, that's often when I find the sermons and the preaching and the other writing is the best.
I mean, obviously you said that your reading has dipped down with all of your other things now, but how do you decide what to read?
Well, there's like the have to read because like I'm on this research project or I'm, had an article or whatever, or there is the sermon series. And so like there's the have to category. And then there's like the stack that the church hands you, the people at church, they hand you these and that one goes in a stack. And I sometimes go through those if I do get to them very quickly. And then there's just kind of joy. And I just try and through those 3 buckets, go through them. And then we have a church book club. And so like that one kind of falls in between the have to, but more like the joy because I help choose the books a little bit. So that keeps me reading usually fiction in a way I wouldn't otherwise. But I just think in those 3 terms and try and have one going in all 3 at a time.
So tell me about this book club.
Yeah, we started, Justin Taylor is a vice president at Crossway, writes for the Gospel Coalition in like 2014, I think, maybe. He did a series on his blog called Novels Worth Reading. And I was fascinated with it, but he asked, every kind of pastor, author, friend, men and women to just contribute. Here's one thing why you should read this one book you're not reading, but you should. And I was blown away that. And so we just started a book club. Part of my being an engineer and being a terrible reader and not doing anything in high school except, reading as little as possible and doing math and science was like, I hadn't read anything. And Jason, who I worked with, was an English major. His wife was an English major. And so they led it in some ways in the selection, but we just went classics or current conversation, like read something that will bring us current or read a classic, which might make us current with some people who think that's interesting. So Pride and Prejudice or whatever. And so we read 4 or 5 a year and there's not as near as many of us doing it as I would like, but we do it anyway. And I love it.
That gives me so much joy. Okay. So you're
going to drive over to one.
I know, seriously, that'd be a long drive. So I, as a reader, and I don't have as many demands on my time as you do, so I read quite a bit, but Good. I always really struggle with finding the balance between reading for spiritual formation and reading just because I love it. So do you struggle with that, or am I like a weird person that does? I'm getting the vibe that I'm a weird person.
No, see that I was nervous that if I'd answer it that way, then you only set that up to be that you're weird.
No, it's okay. I set that up for my own self.
No, I mean, maybe you should wrestle a little bit with the sacred secular kind of like things a little bit more. Maybe we should talk about that, not here, but I mean, I think that would be something that would be hard to maintain across all of life. Now there's Bible reading and there's prayer and there's like things that are overtly means of grace, like clear verses and clear edification that come from that. But I think, when we're playing with our kids or having a dinner with our spouse or going to Cold Stone to eat ice cream, like, is that not also in some ways honoring the Lord and for our spiritual benefit? Like you would say yes to that, I'm sure, all of that. Mm-hmm. So I probably don't. I'm on the other end where like because of the day job is so geared toward reading things that are like overtly spiritual and pastoral or whatever, Bible integrated, that I have to fight for the time for the other one, and so I don't have to wrestle as much with that. Maybe I'm not being fair to you that way.
Well, in relation to like conversation about the worthwhileness of reading outside of spiritual formation, or maybe not outside of, but in addition to, I perfectly timed. I get the TEDS bulletin, which is like a weekly email. And this morning it had an article that was called The Reading Lives of Pastors. So 100%, I'm going to pull that open. And it was really thought-provoking, and we can link it in the show notes. But the author, Brad East, he talks about the history of literacy in the church, and then presents a case for the role of literature, specifically fiction and poetry, in the life and training of all who are engaged in ministry, pastors in particular. And kind of his argument is that words, in a small part, inherently reflect like the big W word of God, and Jesus, and that reading embodies the type of leisure that the Sabbath was created for. So like not reading to like write a sermon, not reading to, not reading Tozer or whatever, but just reading for the sake of pure pleasure and sitting down and doing nothing. So that made me feel a little bit better about the amount that I read. But I do think it's like a hard balance. Would you agree with Brad?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it can get, I don't want to pick on the non-readers so much, because we can spiritualize our hobbies to such an extent that like,
for sure.
So it's an election year. If you don't care about, this, and this from a political standpoint, and understand how all the houses of government interact with each other and who the Supreme Court justices are, well, then are you even a pastor? Like, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't think there's verses that say I should care, but like, this is your hobby, So I'm as a literary kind of bent more now for the last little bit. I love it. I agree with everything you said. That was a great kind of summary, reflection of the word and Sabbath. Great things. I just would press it loosely onto kind of everybody.
Yeah, agreed. We'll be right back. Church Chat is sponsored by TEDS. That's Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. We talk a lot about how TEDS is an amazing place to get a theological education, but you may not be looking to take classes in like Old Testament or Biblical Greek. Well, TEDS is still for you. They have awesome resources that don't involve you sitting in a classroom. And we just mentioned one of them in this episode. It's called the TEDS Bulletin. The TEDS Bulletin is a carefully curated collection of articles, videos, podcast episodes, and events that is delivered straight to your inbox just once a month. You can join the 63,000 other subscribers at teds.edu/divinity/bulletin. And in case you can't remember that, the link to sign up will be in the show notes. Now, back to the show. I think my last rapid fire that really wasn't a rapid fire question is, what is like one or two fiction books that you would recommend to anybody that they should read?
Yeah, for me, it's Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See.
Okay, yes, I would agree with that. That's phenomenal.
Maybe I'll just stay there. I just like him so much. He writes that book in the present tense with like, there's just this real immediacy. It takes a bit to get into just at first, because you're like, it's a flashback kind of book, but it's World War II. So it's accessible in that way that we're familiar with those stories. So I'll just stay there with him. I like his memoir as well. Another, when I put that on Instagram once, someone was like, oh, it's so self-indulgent and whatever, but I loved it.
The Four Seasons in Rome?
Yeah. Do you know that one?
Oh, that is really right up there with All the Light We Cannot See.
Okay. We could get along, Emily. Yeah.
This is great.
Can you answer your own question? Do you mind answering that for fiction? Like, what would you say?
I mean, I would go probably classic in the realm of like Hannah Coulter, like a Wendell Berry, maybe. Yes. But that is, again, not everybody's cup of tea. I feel like Anthony Doerr would be more of a universal. Yeah.
So the Wendell Berry, I'm just getting into Wendell Berry a little bit. I don't know. So I just this summer read Hannah Coulter and read it so there's the book club, and then there's this one guy named Joe, and he and I do our own little book club, and he made me read that one. And we're doing a Memory of Old Jack right now. Because I was like, I want to read more of this little town. So I'm glad you mentioned that one. That one's interesting because it's like a fictionalized memoir.
Yeah. And like, I have yet to read Jayber Crow, but I know that some people like that even better than Hannah Coulter. And this sounds really whatever. But I'm a huge Jane Austen fan. So I feel like everybody should at least read one of hers. I think that's a universal like commentary on society and just it's impeccable writing. So that is my go-to. So Josh, you're going to pick up Pride and Prejudice now?
I own Pride and Prejudice.
Well, I know you have a reader in your
The one by
family,
Keira Knightley? Oh, books. I'm sorry. Wait.
My family is a family of readers. Mm-hmm. So they're very, and my girls especially are just so into books. So we have books. I have books.
I know. Yeah, you have
books.
Yeah. But have you read The Dearly Beloved, Benjamin?
No, I haven't. I don't know that one.
Oh, okay. You should read that one.
Great.
Kara, you'll look it up. I'll send it to you too. It's excellent.
Yeah. Man, this has been a fantastic. Why you laughing at?
You're like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so into.
I wouldn't want to make Josh feel bad. That's what Emily. That's what I was trying to do. I mean,
Thanks.
Make him feel bad.
No, he
That
read
he's
the
not like
Dragon
us?
book. He reads.
I read the Dragon book.
Yeah.
What's the Dragon?
Was it Aragon or
something? Oh
yeah.
Yeah, there's a new one out that my kids all read and my wife read, and now it's laying on the desk next to my bed. I just haven't gotten into
waiting
it.
for you.
Because I got follow up. Yeah, I mean, this has been fantastic, Benjamin. I always learn from you, and you don't have to make a face or sigh every time I say that, but I am thankful. I am thankful for you and the conversations that we've had along the way, and especially thankful for you jumping on here. We kind of, I wish we had more time. Maybe we could get you back to talk about church planning and some of the other areas that we just didn't get to today. Hopefully. And I won't ask you right now because I know you got a lot to balance, and I don't want to force you into committing right now. But at some point, I'm going to try to force you into committing to an episode on season 3. Until then, man, just thanks for being here. We end kind of every episode just talking about what we're loving right now. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be book related.
But it could.
or spiritual. But it could. It totally could be. So what are you guys loving right now?
I'll just say running. And another thing that makes me weird and odd to some people, but I'm enjoying running, and despite getting a little older, I'm finding ways to get a little bit faster. So I'm enjoying that.
Well, mine is somewhat reading related, but our daughter's birthday was yesterday, and we when you just know you've really succeeded in buying them a present. We try to keep it low key present wise, but when you just know this is something that they are going to absolutely adore and love. And we had one of those with our daughter. She is a big reader and she loves music, but she is just turned 9. So we have pretty strict boundaries with screen time and technology and whatnot. And so I really struggled with I don't love giving over my phone so she can listen to Spotify, and she has a Kindle, but it's kind of complicated with being able to use Libby for audiobooks or whatnot. But we found kind of an old school MP3 player that has minimal apps, but as a parent, you can you can uninstall apps. So they can't access the internet or whatever. And so she can just have this little faux iPod that has Spotify and Libby, which is if you don't know Libby, look it up. It's just super cool. Connects to your library. So it was just one of those, I'm glad that kind of thing exists. And she loved it. So that was a big win.
Man, that's awesome. I love when you can nail a gift.
Yeah.
It's just such a great.
It's a great
feeling.
And
I'm not an inherently good gift giver. My instincts are I usually go, what do I really want to get my wife? And then I go, don't do that. Immediately. Okay, first idea, throw that one out. Let's just move on to second. Because second idea is going to be way better than first. I can tell some bad stories about messing up gifts. But I'm loving right now some new relationships. We just went through this kind of adoption merger process with another church. It's been super stressful. We're moving locations to a bigger building. I say that's stressful. It's a huge God blessing and just a grace that he has dumped on our laps. Nothing else to say about it than that. But it does require a lot of work and stress and managing people's expectations, and there's a lot of moving pieces. So it's been a season of challenge, good challenge, but challenge nonetheless. And in the midst of it, there's this side blessing that's oh yeah, this is what it's all about. And it's some of these new relationships I've been able to build with people that are part of the congregation that is merging with us. It's just been such a fun thing. I got to spend time with one of the new guys last night and just laughing about stuff. And I'm man, it's so good in the midst of all this stress. Here's somebody, that I probably am adding stress to his life by all the changes that I'm, we're walking through. And yet we can sit in my office and just laugh and tell stories and have fun. And so I'm just loving some of those new relationships. And,
I read about that merger in an update that went around.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was encouraged. I was that's neat.
Pretty incredible story. Maybe sometime I'll
talk
talk about it more in depth. When you're in the middle of it, still there's so many pieces. It's a lot. Nobody gives you a manual for this kind of thing. There is. It's too contextually unique, I think. There's definitely some key things that need and have to happen, I think, in every case. But so it's hard to talk about it in the middle of it, just because we're in the middle of it. And overall, it's just been such a incredible, just kind of like watching God do stuff that you never could have never thought of, and Him leading you into some right decisions that you didn't even know you were making, So that's been pretty wild. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. We've had just talking about like flexing different leadership muscles and those moments where you feel like maybe you're not cut out for the job, and where do you go from there? And know where home base is. I took a lot of notes, and that's one I have like circled twice. Just know where your home base is when you're trying to balance everything. What's most important? And I have the benefit of checking out your blog, and I'm on your email list. Okay. So I saw that last book review you popped out. I didn't get to read it yet. And we'll put that in the show notes for anybody that wants to jump on and check out Benjamin's stuff. Appreciate that. Thanks so much for being here. And for you listeners, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to follow or, hit the button that makes us pop up in your feed wherever you're listening to us. And we're just so thankful for you guys and the conversations that you have with us, sending us emails after some of these episodes and whatnot. So thanks for listening, giving us your ear for a little bit. We certainly do really appreciate you guys. And for now, still don't have a way to say goodbye. So we're just going to say it. See you next time.
Bye.
The Church Head Podcast is for educational purposes only. We dive deep into important and sometimes sensitive conversations and topics about life in ministry. Please know that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely the views and the opinions of the guests and the hosts, and do not necessarily represent the organizations that we work for. Nor should our views or opinions be considered a full perspective of circumstances that may be mentioned in this podcast. Our perspectives are limited, and so will be this podcast. What we hope to do is have conversations and spark greater conversations that will lead leaders and their organizations towards greater health. The Church Chat Podcast is edited by Emily Gardner and produced by Emily Gardner and Josh Ott. The Church Chat Podcast is supported by EFCA East, an Eastern District of the Evangelical Free Church of America, covering 6 states. EFCA East helps leaders live well, lead well, and multiply, helping churches find new vitality and multiply transformational churches on the East Coast. The EFCA is multiplying transformational churches among all people. For more information, visit efcaeast.com. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and can't wait to see you on the next Church Chat episode.